I am going to go ahead and start us, and as other people join us, that will be great. So I'm going to ask you, if you are not currently speaking, to just go ahead and mute yourself. That would be wonderful. That is the first order of business. And the second order of business is to say welcome, everyone, and welcome back to Mark and Nancy. How many people were here when they visited Temple Bethel a year and a half ago? Yeah, so they came, you might remember, it was really, really wonderful. Spent a weekend with us, did some teaching and did some work with the kids, and just got to know our community and hear about what our visions for this piece of art that they were going to create were, and went off back to their studio and did a lot of work. And then the pandemic hit and they did more work and created a really, really beautiful window for us. So this evening is just a chance for us to hear a little bit more about their process, what happened, how they made this window. And so that's going to be amazing. They have lots of pictures and maybe a few stories. And I just want to acknowledge Roger and Joyce have donated this window in honor of their parents, of Bennett and Edith, which is really wonderful. So we're especially glad that you guys could both join us tonight. And I didn't know if you wanted to take a few minutes. I never got to know your parents, unfortunately. I wanted to know if you wanted to take a few minutes to share a little bit about them and maybe their connection to the synagogue as we get started.
Sure. Roger, if you're going to speak, you got to unmute.
You gotta unmute.
I just said very few words that I would defer first to my sister.
You are too kind. I don't have a lot of memories. It was so long ago. But one of the first memories of the congregation that I do have is perhaps not an appropriate religious one, but I remember going to high holiday services when they were held on the second floor of a building on Lower Water Street. And that was before the Woodlawn building was in existence. And forgive me, what I remember most about that was looking around at some point during the services and realizing that most of the men who had been there at the beginning were no longer there. And it took me a while to figure that out, because it seemed that the high holidays always coincided with the World Series. And all of the men were outside on the street, gathered around somebody's transistor radio, listening for the score. So that is my earliest memory of the congregation.
I love that. Thank you. That's wonderful.
Roger, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Well, Joyce is right about that. In fact, if those of you who are baseball fans will remember the famous Bucky Dent home run that beat the Red Sox and kept them out of the World Series, that took place on Yom Kippur. And I remember sitting in my dad's house and watching that game, and I got Rabbi's present. So it's Bucky Bleeping Dent was his name after that. But I do have memories. First of all, to Mark and Nancy, I wish I could figure out some way to be related to Nancy since we have the same last name. But
Sinai. Let's go back to Sinai.
I have no artistic ability, so I don't think that we are probably. But I remember back in the early 50s, being a very little boy, and Joyce wasn't much older. And just for those of you who didn't know my folks that well, they picked up and moved to Maine from Boston to take over Nicholson and Ryan. And I was just a little boy. I don't think they knew anybody here. And they built their life here with their family. They built a home. They built the store up, and they became members early on, I know, of the synagogue. And I think I remember even back before Joyce, I remember going to the second floor, I think, of a building in Gardner, actually, to services as a very young boy before this one was built.
I don't remember that.
And then the new synagogue was built, and it became an important part of my life and my parents' life. The only bad memories I have were that Hebrew school was always on Sunday afternoon, right during the New York Giants game. And all of us would be very unhappy about the fact that we would miss the first half of the Giants game each week. They have to go to Hebrew school with Rabbi Zabranowitz. But the synagogue's been an important part, certainly, of my parents' life and their expanded family life. Both of us went to Hebrew school there. The families had a bar mitzvah there. There's been a wedding there. And then in later years, for me, both of my kids were bar and bar mitzvahed in that synagogue. And it's just an important part of the life that my parents built. And I know how proud they were of being a part of the synagogue right from the beginning, and how strongly that they felt about it. And it's been the same with me and with our kids as well. I think they found it to be a place of warmth, a place of family, and a place of really grounding, that whatever else was going on in the world, that the synagogue was a safe place and a place where they could reattach with who they really were. So, and my mother would be particularly proud of this, by the way, because she was a great lover of beauty. And whether that meant her own gardens at her home, our home, or this beautiful window, my dad would love it too, but my mom would be particularly proud of it. And so just my hat's off on Joyce too, to when we kind of said we'd like to be part of this, not really having any idea what the product would be, but just totally blown away by what not only a magnificent piece of art it is, but how well it's going to fit into the building. And I congratulations again to Mark and Nancy for what you've created. Couldn't be more proud to be part of it, and can't wait to, for the next high holidays. Well, it's the equivalent of opening day at Fenway Park. The next time there can be a really big crowd there to really appreciate it. So thank you for doing it.
Thank you both for sharing. And we'll just have to hope the high holidays don't fall during World Series season next year. Sports in Judaism, it's really tough when they conflict. So I'm going to turn it over to, and I'll say one thing. I have had the pleasure of being able to watch a whole bunch of people see the window, like walk into the space and see the window for the first time. And it's really amazing to get to see people's reactions as they walk in and the space. So I'm going to turn it over to Mark and Nancy, and take it away.
So first, I want to say thank you to Roger and Joyce, and for you honoring and remembering your parents in this way. It was really a blessing for us to do the work. So how we're going to do this is we have a PowerPoint presentation that we will share with you, and we've got a lot of different images, different angles. We kept asking for questions in advance. We didn't get those, so we just ran with our own things, thoughts of what you might be interested in. But don't hesitate to, I guess if you put in the chat, if there are questions that come up or things that you want us to elaborate on, that will be great. And we'll just go through what we've got. So let me share the screen and see if I can make this work. Yes.
Can you see it?
Everybody see? Okay. So this is us together. And, before we came up to the congregation, I actually need to backtrack that one of the most exciting things was just how this all started. Was Mark and I were exhibiting in Boston at the URJ Biennial, and this very excited, energetic woman came up and said, I'm the rabbi at this small congregation in Maine, and we're building and we're renovating our space, and the architects put in that there should be a stained glass window, and would you design it for us? And we were like, okay, sure, would you make it for us? So that was very exciting to hear that. And then of course it was another, and I said, well, maybe we can even come and spend time with you and get to know you, and I can do a a workshop with your kids and whatever. And that was that. And then eventually the time came when it made sense for us to plan. And of course, we needed to have an alternate snow date just in case, because what is Maine after all? But we were then eventually sent these drawings, these architectural drawings, which of course the yellow circle on the left is where the window would go, and imagine all those seats in there filled. And then there was the drawing, the elevation drawing with it from the outside, which I guess the architects automatically thought, okay, stained glass window, it's got to have a synagogue, it's got to have a Magen David on it, a Jewish star. And one of the things we were told right away was, no, we don't want a Jewish star in the window. And I appreciated that, especially when I learned that that was more of concern and reverence for the neighbors than out of fear of the neighbors in the neighborhood. And I thought that was very respectful and honorable and worthy of attention. So we came up for the weekend. It was February of 2019. Yeah. And that Sunday, we came on Friday. I spoke to the congregation and we did Torah study the next day. It was so wonderful to get to know the congregation. And then Sunday morning, I did an activity with the Hebrew school. And the thought was, well, we're doing the stained glass window. We at least should give them a sense of what that was all about and get them to sign in on it, to join in. So that was what we did on Sunday morning. And then, whoops, that's not what I want to do. Sorry, I don't know why that came up there. Is this something in the way there, or you're just seeing a slide? You just see
We
the
just see
slide?
the slide of the kids.
Okay. Okay, I don't know why that other thing is in the way. I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to,
No problem.
these little technical, okay, that should be fine. There it is. Okay, now it's right. Okay, so then in the afternoon, during the congregational meeting, we showed some slides of past projects, and then we had a brainstorming session, and I asked people to talk about things that were important to them, and somewhere there's all that jumbled in there. There was a lot. We knew it was going to be a circular window, and it was important that it was colorful, that it was warm and welcoming. Roger, I appreciate that you mentioned that one of the things you remember, or your parents felt, it was a very warm and welcoming place for them. We wanted to reflect the people, the study. Somebody had really strong feelings about the shofar, the Nir Tamid, the months and cycle of the year, seasons, the sense of rural inclusive Judaism and natural beauty, a tree of life, and wanting it to be abstract rather than literal, and that it should flow and really represent Maine. There was this notion of in and out, which was the connection, the internal connection, and then reaching out to the bigger community. Somebody talked about turkeys, that there were always a lot of turkeys there, but that didn't make it into the window. And I was trying to think, okay, the next ingredient that was really significant was the sense of trust that was established, that I think coming and being with you and spending the time allowed us to get to know you, to have a sense of developing trust by learning about ourselves and each other. And I feel like that was a very important ingredient of this process, that we got to know you, you got to know us. And then, as Rabbi said, we took the information that we got after that weekend and went off with lots of permission to see what would evolve. And we took the themes, the things that stood out were the cycle of the Jewish year, the seasons, and others, things that are represented here. And we needed to make it happen. Now, I shared this slide and this other work is because partially to show the evolution of an idea. What you see is a painting that I did, I don't know how many decades ago, that represented, I had grown up in New England, lived in California, and had this bi-coastal sensibility. And it was, what is it about the East Coast or that was an issue for me? And it was the changing seasons, and it was the relationship with family. So I did this painting first, and it was to represent the seasons going around the central panel, which was based on an image of my grandmother and I. Eventually, that piece became the template for a quilt that I made, and that concept of going around became the template for the frame that we used. The design of the frame. You know, we had this round, this circular surface that the window was going to be in, but it had to be broken up in some way. And since we were working with the cycle of the year and the seasons, it made sense to wrap around a central theme, which we got to later. Okay, so building again on things there, the idea of, there was something too about it being Maine and all the artistry that goes on and the craftsmanship. And I had this idea of weaving together. And then this is, of course, a very rough sketch of showing the holidays in the season juxtaposed there. So in order to get things rolling, I really needed to do research. And one of the ways I did that was I went online and pulled out images of Maine, throughout Maine, though I had a sense of Maine from my being a New Englander, but pulling out actual lakes and waterfront around there, and the trees. You guys were very specific in the kinds of trees there that were involved, so I pulled them out, and then Mark and I went. Take it away.
So what you're looking at there actually is the glass warehouse where we buy our inventory, our materials. And these are all sheets of glass divided by color and quality and kind. All of these are hand blown streakies from Germany. And the glass that became part of the window, we found the day that we took this picture. And actually the couple of sheets that are on the bottom right there are just flat colors, hand blown, beautiful glass. Bottom left. Yeah. Dyslexia. And then so the next slide shows actually the sheets of glass that we selected to use to represent the trees vertically and the water horizontally. And I believe there's 5 bands of water and probably 5 bands of trees also.
Yeah.
And from these sheets, we carefully cut what became your window, which we'll get into a little more.
So going back to the design, and you can see while there are elements of the design, this is where the trust came into. I mean, there's the design and the concepts and the imagery of the design. The in and out was represented in the center of the Torah, of this idea of reaching to each other, and then reaching with the idea too that also means reaching out to others and connecting with other people. So that's what the central piece sitting on Torah values was all about. But I really want to reinforce that you know that this isn't what the window looked like in the end, but you trusted us to work with this, to work with the concepts and develop them further as we were going, which is the really the only way for me as an artist to work. I can't think it all through in advance fully, but there you go. So there was like taking that design and working it up to the full scale and using a projector to do it.
In modern days, we can scan the design, so, and then with the computer project it with the with a digital projector and really move things around and skew
And
get it right.
this was an early rendition, and you can see on the left, to my left there on the wall, are the notes on that pad that we did in our brainstorming session. But again, this is not how things ended up. We worked and reworked things over and over. This looks a bit more, though it still isn't the finished design, but you can see where, let's see if I go back there, where the flame is just in the central piece. Here, we took it above the line there, okay? So these kinds of design decisions evolved as things went on.
Yeah, scale is one thing, and full size, the real actual size of the window is something else.
Okay, and then really the need to refine the design in detail, and this is getting closer to that finished design. And this is called a cartoon that we're working up here, full size, like that. And look who's there. So we were blessed. Not only this is the second visit that Ellen paid us to the studio to see make sure we were doing things right, so which was wonderful to have Ellen come. And I'm sorry, I'm blanking on Ellen's partner's name, but they both came, and it was wonderful to have them. So here's the design, pretty much worked up.
Those really are just about the finished lead lines. And when the cartoon is finished and the lead lines are set, the design is established, then with the actual fabrication, my half of it will start. But first, there's, that's good.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, first there's selection of the glass. You saw the water glass and the glass we used for the trees, but there was all these other colors that we carefully selected to blend and work with each other. We labeled each color and then marked it on the cartoon, so I would know where to cut what color glass.
Yeah. So there I am marking up which glass we selected on the cartoon. So now you have this design worked up with all these codes on it.
And those are the actual lead lines cuts that exist in the window. This is the final design in terms of where the cuts are and the widths. So then we move into the shop. I take the cartoon off the wall, and the white copy will be the cartoon. And I have large sheets of carbon paper, so I make a sandwich with the brown paper you see on the right there is pattern paper. It's heavier paper that I will use to cut the glass. And in between the white layer of the cartoon and the pattern paper is a brown layer, which is the work drawing, which you'll see later, which I'll actually build the windows using the work drawing as a guide. So I'm copying, tracing through the lines that Nancy's given me. And actually these two pictures are not your window, but they do show the process. Whereas I'm drawing in where the lead lines are, and then each piece, as it will be cut apart, needs to be labeled so we know where to put it and how to put it back together, keep it all straight. So, and you'll see that each piece will get the piece number, where it goes, and the color indication of what color we selected to cut there. The scissors I'm using are special 3-bladed scissors, which actually take out, you can see on the right there, a little sliver of paper sticking up. That's the thickness of the heart that I need to make allowance for when I cut the glass, so that it will all fit together with the lead came in.
Right.
Next. Here we are. Actually, this is the Hanukkah window, right?
Hanukkah and Tu B'Shvat. Yeah.
And I'm proceeding to cut out the patterns, which you see started the process going along, and a pile of patterns collected in a tray, which I will then sort by color.
So I think what's important to recognize too is, in fact, this is like a big jigsaw puzzle. It's designing the what the finished puzzle is going to look like, and it's creating the puzzle, and having all these pieces, which, you know, if you just saw a bunch of paper pieces like in the lower right of the slide, it's a mumble jumble, but each one has a code system. I remember the first time seeing this that Mark, you know, has established. It's really kind of amazing that then things get sorted by, as Mark said, by color or glass selection, and then it gets then the next happens.
So once the patterns are all cut and sorted, I'm going to cut the glass, and I use a regular steel wheel glass cutter. That's what I'm doing there. I placed the colors of the patterns of the same color on the glass, cutting each piece. And on the right, you can see finished, those pieces are cut. You see underneath, the A1 represents the color, that in amber in this case. And then the section window panel E, piece number 32 and 22 and so forth. The next step is the decoration of the painting surface detailing that goes into the window. And we did a lot of that in your window. And so the technique we use to hold the window up so we get an idea of what it looks like is we actually take each piece of glass, place it on a large easel, which is really a piece of 1/4-inch plate glass, the size of the window. And then with hot wax, I drop hot wax in all the corners, which will adhere the cut pieces. And you see on the left at the bottom, you see the tree glass, and you see A1 and amber, and then a green yellow, and the rest. And I'm dropping hot wax so that when it's all done, wax at every joint, the window can actually be picked up, put up, and Nancy can see it and start painting. On the left is the finished wax window before any painting goes on. And on the right, she goes to work. And
so there I am painting the lulav.
And painting in glass is a medieval technique, goes back at least the year 1200, back a little bit earlier. It's a special vitreous glass paint, ground glass and pigment that you'll see when it's all finished and the design is what Nancy wants. I will put the glass in a kiln, I'll show pictures of it, and fire the glass right in like a pottery glaze to about 1200 degrees. So Nancy's working on it. Here, the flames on the Hanukkah window. Notice behind her are easels that are waxed, ready to be put up as each one gets painted.
Yeah, so sometimes the painting made sense to happen vertically, and sometimes it needed to be flat. Mm-hmm. I needed a little more control with the flames. Yeah, I pulled this out too. As I pointed out, the near Tamid flame went above the midsection, so we needed to allow for that space. It was also an interesting thing deciding that, you know, it needed something more than just the glass or just painted as flame. And so I worked with the word hallelujah. And actually I sent it to a friend who's a professional Hebrew calligrapher, and she really wasn't thrilled that I was going to separate the letters out like that. And she, you know, it wasn't class. We had a little back and forth with that, but ultimately I did that. And in order to capture the lettering, I had played with it, put the paper down, put the glass on top of it on the light box, and then painted that.
Very traditional technique to do that. Putting a cartoon underneath the glass and then doing trace based on that. Whether it's a face in a medieval window or calligraphy here, that's very, very traditional. As I'm looking at this, I noticed on the left side, we talked about selecting glass and the streaky colors. And before you saw us cutting a flat amber, was no movement. But as I look at with this flame, the color, the way we've selected the glass and the movement, I'm just admiring her work and sort of want to point it out that that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
That just doesn't happen. There's these sheets with movement, and Nancy really will take a pattern and say, let's have this red streak go this way. Let's do that. This is flat. That's okay.
Yeah.
Let's do this movement.
yeah.
So
There's a lot of intentionality.
that's pretty cool.
A lot of intentionality with that.
Mark
Oh,
and Nancy, you have a question about painting in the chat box about why you paint the glass if it's colored, or is it to create colors you don't have, or is it just the calligraphy? So can you talk a little bit more about the painting and
Sure,
what?
sure. It's
and it's perfect.
yeah,
time to do it.
it's always a confusing term to say paint the window. As you can see, remember we showed a picture of different colors, our glass selection up on the window in the easel. That's the colored glass. So there was red glass, there's green glass, there's light amber, there's dark amber. So we're using hand blown colored glass. And what you see in the light box here, you see the tree glass, which as if you remember the sheet we showed you originally had streaks moving in it. The blue glass also has some movement, but of course it doesn't have a flame. Or in the case of Megillah, it doesn't have the decoration. And that's what the paint adds, those details. And traditionally, it would have been a saint's face and the hands and the garments. Was the original use of glass paint, but of course, it's a medium. It's an artist medium, and an artist can use, take it and run with
Right.
it.
So it's not painting color on the glass, it's painting detail on the glass. So if we go back thinking about the lulav, if we didn't add the glass, it would still read as a lulav, but adding the lines that I did with the painting could give it more texture, could have it be the
Richer.
well, not just enrich it, but it could look more like the weave. And these can look like flames.
So no,
Whoa.
go back.
Yeah.
So paint is really it's a matte grisaille color. No, it doesn't have color. It's black, or if it's on in a washy way, it can be a grayish or a tint matte. So that's paint. Well, paint. I guess 301. The next layer of paint is actually silver stain. You see that in this picture. Silver stain was invented in the 14th century, really, to depict halos. And I know in English windows of that time, there's a lot of white glass, clear glass, and stain was heavily used to make yellow halos and other details. So we're still using stain. And right in the bottom of this picture, you see a piece of blue and you can see a piece of the tree glass that we had prepared previously because we're testing stain. So the bottom pieces there where it says in did not go in the kiln, whereas the two would have the yellow areas, we put stain on, we fired, because stain's a little bit tricky and we wanted to make sure how the effect would be. So there is fired stain and it's yellows. You see it on the flames above that where Nancy just painted stain, it's brown and kind of opaque. It will go in the kiln and turn to yellow at around the 1200 degrees, around 1000 degrees. So that's what's going on there to staining and painting.
Okay, so and there they are going into the kiln.
It's actually probably coming out.
Or
yeah, it looks
being
like
cooked.
they look fired. They look shiny. It's
Okay,
yeah, but I think
But
I think that's coming out of the kiln. But there
Okay.
they are. That's the kiln. We fire about 1200. And this is an interesting picture in that it's on the top. You see an easel I've been chipping the glass off. Nancy has finished her painting. The glass up there, where there's painted detail, like on the mask, a little bit on the Seder plate. That glass that has paint will go in the kiln to be fired, while the brown work drawing, this glass has come out of the kiln. The paint is already fired. Before it's fired, you can wipe the paint right off. It's very fragile. After it's fired, it's permanent. It's in the surface and it'll last forever. So that's what's going on there. I'm unloading the kiln, filling up the work drawing, getting ready to actually lead the window up.
and actually Mark mentioned that the paint is permanent when it's fired in, and this is kind of an interesting drawing. on the left is the cartoon, and you can see some kind of doodly lines in the Torah scroll, which actually I had painted on the glass, and then I didn't like the way it looked. So because the paint wasn't fired yet, we could remove.
We fired
Oh,
it.
we fired and we did again?
We have-
Okay,
we have it.
could have, if we hadn't fired it, we could have wiped it down and then done it, which we did in other cases.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a different concept.
Okay.
We
Yeah, we
improved it.
reworked it.
We've looked at it. We can do better.
Yeah, well,
So
and
we did.
also it's more like a Torah scroll with the columns.
Mhm, mhm.
So this, I actually kind of threw this one in the last minute. These are, it's again, different phases of the drawing on the right, the last drawing I think that we had sent you, but then this was working up the design and actually using photographs of what we had there. But then the next step, if we're letting up the windows, is what size lead to use. And you can see in the upper left of the piece of paper on the left, there's different lines and demarcations for 1/4 inch, 3/16, and 3/8 of an inch. And we used 3 different lead sizes,
Mhm.
which you can see a little bit.
Yeah, you'll see some
Yeah.
close-ups, but you do see heavier lines and thinner lines. Again, an artistic decision to tell the story, to define the forms. Go on. Now, this is actually the work of leading up the window, where I've started on the left side, and I'm going to work my way across to the right. I'm working on the work drawing, following the lines so that everything is in place. And I have ultimately the window has to fit in the frame. So the outside lines there are the shape that I have to make the window so that upon installation, it fits. But you also really see the thinner lines going through the tree area there on the left, whereas the menorah and the lulav is defined by heavier lines, and all of that was based on the previous picture. Twisting my neck constantly, looking at that, deciding how we design the window. And this is further along in the process, leading up this window. Each piece gets lead bent around it. Each piece of lead is mitered where it hits the next lead so that I can solder the joints, which you'll see that will hold it all in place. This is now the complete window that has been soldered, each joint. And
Soldering.
that soldering on the top left there, it's use about a 200-watt iron, and piece by piece we solder it in place. And the final step in the fabrication, actually next to the final step, is to fill all the spaces between the glass and the lead with putty. And that's what's going on in the other two pictures.
And just so you're not trying to figure out where this is in your window, this isn't your window. We didn't have images of the soldering or the puttying, polishing from your window, but this is the process.
Same process.
Same
Do it once,
process.
you do it again.
Yeah.
So putty is pushed between the glass and the lead. The leads are pressed down. The putty oozes out. You pick out the excess putty, clean off the paddle with some whiting, which absorbs the oil, and a brush until the whole thing is shiny clean. And this is actually the last picture in the shop, our new studio, where all 5 panels are finished, puttied, shiny, and they will each get a steel reinforcing bar, because that's the way it goes, to strengthen the structure. And the bars are actually not soldered on yet in this picture, but they're cut to size and they're placed. And I will solder each bar on, and then load the truck and come up to see you guys.
There's that one. We're reaching in, reaching out. Here's a detail of the shofar that I know somebody wanted in there. And that the opening of the shofar has different imagery in there, different markings. And well,
Can you do that? It's been a long day.
I know. Rabbi, I'm going to have you help me with my because I know you know what's going on here.
Yeah, so it's the shofar blasts from Rosh Hashanah. So it's Tekiah is the tat, and then the 3 checks Shavarim, and then Trua, the 9, and then the last one is Tequila Gedola, which I think is like the coolest detail ever. Like,
And there's
so awesome.
1,100 strokes.
And there were 100 strokes
For,
across there too.
Oh
for
my
all of
gosh.
the blows of the
Right,
holiday.
sure.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
amazing.
I'm pretty sure that was true.
Oh, that would,
Yeah,
yeah.
there's all sorts, there's probably other little things.
We
in
had
there.
the music going while Nancy was painting it.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
it was, she could hear it.
And it was, I have to say, it was really fun to play with different texture in this window. You know, there was the movement of the glass with the water and the tree and getting that to work, but then with these more solid surfaces to break them up in a meaningful and somewhat symbolic way.
It was a real treat to watch her do that. Just to see her be free with design forms. That's where the trust part comes in. It's just wonderful embellishment.
Right.
And I've seen a lot of glass go by, and this stuff was fun.
Yeah.
This was really a kick to watch this happen.
And look what's happening. That was quite a day. It was really wonderful to be welcomed back by Ellen and the rabbi and Jerry. We saw everybody all masked up, and
Sure,
but
we don't know if I have a
welcome
mask on there or not, do we?
I think we do.
I think I don't.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And that's your window. Which is, it definitely is not, it's based on that design that you guys all approved and went for, and allowed us to take it as far as we could. So we are so grateful for that opportunity. And I guess we can take questions. There we go. That's us now. And I can exit here. Stop share.
Thank you.
Sure.
Here we are.
Wow, I learned a lot about how this window got put together. So that was amazing. So I want to open it up for questions. So if people just want to unmute, I can call on you. Roger.
Thank you. Some of those details, it's like the Da Vinci Code. There's a whole history there. You can probably look at it 50 times and appreciate something new every time. Do you have any idea how many total hours, beginning of the design to end this, that this took you to create this?
That's the good side of COVID, is we had as much time as we wanted. And that's a real luxury and doesn't happen often in the business of stained glass, the stained glass studio. And no way was I counting hours, and I cannot answer that question. We put in all the hours we felt it needed.
Or that it could use. I mean, it would have, I mentioned, I'd forgotten that was a particular part, the central glass that we had fired, and then Mark cut again and we did it again. And initially the installation date was going to be in May, and that was a little bit tight. That would have been tight, but we were going to do it, and we would have done the best that we could have under those circumstances. And the good news was, and we really did look at it as a silver lining of COVID, and we needed all the silver linings we could get, was one, that we still had access to our studio because it was pretty private for us very private. We were the only ones who could go in that entry and be there, and we could be isolated, and we could still go to work. And we had time because that May deadline became irrelevant. And so I guess it was August that was it August that we came up? Yeah.
It was July.
Anyway, it was a lot. It was several months later, and we got to what month is it now? No, and we got to explore and experiment, and I could be one of those finicky artists who could say, no, that I don't like that. I want to do it over again.
Yeah, and that's a real luxury. I say, pointing out Nancy's design work, just it makes a difference if you got a deadline and the clock is running versus just we're going to do this until we're happy with it.
Right. Right.
And in reality, I don't know if we're going to talk about this. Often, I showed you waxing. Well, often you wax, you paint, you fire, you lead. Well, we had time to wax, paint, fire, wax again, and look at it, and then make some changes, make some additions. In the real world of stained glass, where you're counting hours and paying hourly wages and all the rest of the business stuff, it's double waxing is not in the budget. So who cares?
We
It's
pulled
just
out
us.
all the stops.
Yeah,
for
we
you.
weren't paying anybody by the hour.
Yeah, and when it was us
It really makes a
deciding,
difference,
which was really part of the privilege to do it. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Other questions?
Joyce, and then Peter, and then Chuck.
Right.
I'd just like to say a huge thank you. I had no idea what the process involved, and the detail, the symbolism, the colors, and just the beauty of the whole is magnificent. I so much wish my parents could see it. I know that they would be thrilled, and I look forward to seeing it in person.
Yay.
So
Yeah.
thank you a million gazillion.
Thank
You're
you.
so welcome. Thank
We
you.
will have an in-person dedication of the building at some point. That is still on our radar screen, so it's gonna happen.
I'm looking forward to it.
And we will come up for it.
Wonderful.
Yay! Oh, that's great. That's great. And Joyce, you and Sue and David will finally meet. Peter, and then Chuck.
Peter, me?
Yes, you.
I just have it may be a silly question, but under what conditions would you use copper foil and not the lead cane? Or
None.
no conditions?
None. Yeah, for me, copper foil is good for lampshades and small boxes and projects. No, seriously, it is. Lead is lousy for lampshades. It stretches. Lead needs a frame to hold it in place. But in terms of a window being exposed to sunlight and expansion and contraction and the weight of gravity and building movement and potential repairs down the road, lead is the material used. And I know Tiffany used copper foil here and there, but I've been doing this 45 years. I've never used copper foil in a window.
Thank you.
In a vertical window. Yeah. Trafe.
Chuck.
I just
Yeah,
remember
I mean-
Carol's name, Carol. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Who was the name?
Chuck's gonna ask the question.
So one of the fascinating pieces, as you described this, was sort of the process of making the little jigs and the little pieces. Could you describe the process of how you decide what a piece is going to be like? How you break it all down to all the little pieces that are in there?
Well, that's the design. I mean, that's the thing. It's like it's figuring out a design that works and recognizing that while it may work small, it doesn't necessarily work big, and going back and forth until it works. And then making some decisions in terms of, I drew partially mostly with the notion that where there was a solid line, what that was going to be a lead line. But in some cases, there were, I used paint where it could have, if I wanted to break it down smaller, that could have been a lead line. But it's really, for me, it's a lot of intuition, and for, Mark being the structural maven of what makes sense.
Yeah, I got a big stick to hit her. The glass has to be, each piece of glass has to be strong enough. It can't have a big bite taken out of it or or a long, thin, weak piece. There's, there's structural elements, and we've been working together like, about 15 years now, and I've sort of bashed her into her
No,
brain
that-
to
don't say
make,
that.
to what pieces can be cut and not.
Well, what's interesting too is before I started to design for glass, for many years, I painted on silk, which actually you can see something behind maybe a little bit, but I used a rubber-based resist, and I broke things down with those lines with a resist, and people would say, oh, it looks like stained glass. Well, some of the shapes that I worked with could easily work as full glass pieces, and sometimes they had to be broken down. And to then look at things, it's like, okay, nothing operates in isolation. So that piece next to another piece, and how things balance out. So sometimes it was structural and sometimes purely aesthetic.
Right.
I think.
Yep.
Yeah.
Every line needs to really belong there. It's if the feeling is the lid line has to be there because of structure, you can feel that. I mean, the lines have to work and really flow, and you gotta love the lines and embrace it, embrace the medium.
Yeah.
And Nancy's become quite adept at doing that.
Francine has a question.
I have a question. Hi.
Hi.
Gwen, talked about what your art was like before the glass, because I was going to ask that, but I'm curious to know, are you still painting on silk and other kinds of things, or are you just doing glass work now? I was curious about where your career is going.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yes.
So I, a couple of years ago, had to give up silk painting because of arthritis in my thumb, and that I wasn't first of all, I was having pain in my thumb after years of stretching silk and doing this repetitive motion, and then doing the resist with like this. I had a lot of pain, and I wasn't having the strength to do it. Even when I would address the pain and use a splint, I just didn't have the same control. And surgery could have been an option, but I wouldn't have the same strength. So I reluctantly let go of it. And in the move, we moved from when we first met you to when we installed the windows, we moved from Western Massachusetts to Providence, Rhode Island. And in the move, I let go of all of the supplies for the silk painting, which was a big deal, let me just say. And now, and I guess it has to be one of the other silver linings of the pandemic, I've been doing some online teaching of I actually primarily intergenerational work and doing mixed media with people, and less about the art making and more about the experiential sharing. So in my own stuff, I've been playing with paper, and doing little things, which is really kind of fun. And we'll see where it all goes. I feel like this time, I mean, we could talk about all the wonderful things that came, how the pandemic allowed us certain things for your window. I feel like the pandemic has just introduced a whole new reality that I expected in our move to have engage with the community, the local community in a different way, and having people come and teaching them about stained glass and doing all this stuff. And I don't know how it's going to play out. I don't know. It's all in flux. Yeah. But it was in flux before. That's part of the thing. It was in flux before the pandemic. Yes. Somebody else had a question.
Liel?
Yeah.
Yeah, first I wanted to share my great appreciation of all the effort and talent that went into that, because I certainly would never have the patience to do. I mean, there'd be throwing shit all over the place. It'd be broken glass. I mean, that was just not me. And so I have a great appreciation for people who can do stuff like that. So I'm very honored that you did this for us. I did have a question, sort of a technical question about down the bottom. I guess those are mountains or something. And that part was a little unclear to me, and I wondered if you could talk a little about your thoughts.
So it's a combination of Mount Sinai and the tablets on the mountain. That's Shavuot. So the receiving of the tablets. So there were 5 and 5, and then there's a section that has 10. So it's the 10 commandments on the tablets there. That's what that is, like mushed in to Sinai. It's a little abstract, but there it is.
I think it's stained glass abstract is probably a good thing.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah.
No, the white above is cloudy.
Yeah, and the clouds.
With a
Yeah.
touch of stain up there, just a touch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Now actually, I feel like we should put the image back up again for a second. I'm gonna go here. I'm gonna share. I'm gonna go back to here so you can see, right? Can you see that?
Yes.
Yeah, so there we have. So yeah, we've got, well, if we start on the lower left with the shofar and the pomegranate and the open machzor, I guess, then go over to, we go up and have Sukkot and the Hakafot, the open Torah scroll there, and then up to Hanukkah and Tu B'Shvat, and around over to Purim and Pesach, and my brain cells are with the counting of the Omer leading back to Shavuot and around, and then with the Ner Tamid and the open Torah scroll and the hands connecting to each other, reaching in and reaching out. So, any questions while we have the image up, or comments?
Well, I just want to note that place, that's where the Ner Tamid used to hang, right? So you guys really, that's part of the reason the Ner Tamid is there, is to remind us that when our shul was oriented the other way, that's where the Ner Tamid was. So I think I love that detail.
And I love that I came across those images today with the different stages of the Ner Tamid. But it's always fascinating to look back and to see all of the steps involved. And I did not include some of the early design concept images that a select few saw. Thank you, Ellen, for still trusting me to carry on with it. After some of them, when I look at that, it's like, what was I thinking? And it's like, I was thinking is the point. It was like, it's a process to get to this point. Yeah, so there's that. So I'm gonna stop sharing.
Do any other questions? We have maybe time for one or two more.
I actually have one more question. And Nancy and Mark, maybe it would be nice, I don't know if you would be willing to do this, but it might be nice to just get some notes on each of the quadrants from you. I think some of the things you described tonight about what was going on and what you were trying to represent, and the shofar blast, all those sort of little details.
Sure.
If you're willing to kind of write that up, it might be nice for us to put a little booklet together that we could have available next to the window. So if people are looking at it, they could read more about the details. I think it'd be really nice to do that.
Okay, and if we get a copy of this recording, that'd be helpful too for us to work with. What I wanted to say too, I had forgotten, I didn't point it out when we were looking at the weave, is just, one of the steps too was that in between the weave, the background color was relevant to the season. It was like, the more orangey fall colors of the fall panel, and then the crystally icy color in for winter, and the green for the spring holidays or season, and then the blue for summer. You know, all of the, like, there were lots of things that went into it. And I think that makes something gel, is all those little details. Yeah. Yeah. So anything else? Yes, Ellen.
Well, I think Roger and Joyce, your parents would have loved this. The thing, I have such strong memories of the elegance, I think, of both of them. And I think they would have appreciated the beauty and the depth, the complicated process that this was. You know, your father and the library, and your mother and her gardens. And I think this is just right for them. They were elegant. I mean, I just have this vision of them coming into the synagogue. Really, we don't dress the way they dressed. You know, we really have fallen down. They were just stunning couple.
They would love it. You were right. They absolutely would love it.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
That's great to hear. Well, thank you for your interest in the details. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to double down on what I think Ellen or Fran suggested, which is, it doesn't have to be that long, but something where we could, there'd be a little bit of prose about what was represented there. I think that'd be great to have that reference.
Yeah, and Roger and Joyce, we'll talk more, but we could also add something nice about your parents in there too, and the things that they loved and how that's reflected in the window. It'd be really nice to do that.
Oh, that would be lovely. Thank you.
Which is great. It's the things that they love that we had no idea of.
No question.
That's great. That's great. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, thank you to everyone for joining, and to Mark and Nancy for suggesting that you do this. I mean, I know I have such a greater appreciation for the window now, and everything that went into it. And I'll just share with everyone something I told Mark and Nancy before you came on, which is that back when the Hebrew school kids were still there, they all wanted to go see the window. So we did a very quick look at the window, and then and I explained, we talked about through all the holiday cycle. And a few weeks later, one of the kids was trying to remember the name of Shavuot. He couldn't remember it. And he was like, the mountain with the holidays at the bottom of the stained glass window. That's the one I'm talking about. So this is already an amazing teaching tool. And just wait till I send them on a scavenger hunt and ask them to find all the hidden things in there. They will never forget the shofar sounds again. So thank you for both your time tonight and for this really incredible piece of art. That is, I know we are going to appreciate even more when we're all in the building together. And then I know the next generation of people at the temple will appreciate as well. So thank you for this gift. And thank you to all of you for joining us this evening. And yeah, go ahead and give a little clap if you want to, everyone.
Thank you.
Yay. I know this is always the awkward part. When ending the Zoom things are always a little awkward, but it was amazing. So I know I speak on behalf of everyone when I say thank you. This was really wonderful. And I will just remind everyone, because you know announcements are what rabbis do, that we have prophet study on Thursday. We happen to have a bat mitzvah this Saturday. And then we have a whole week of Hanukkah fun starting Thursday night, latke cooking with Cammie Davidson and her 3-year-old grandson Dolev. 6:30 every night for Hanukkah with TBE. It is not just for children, you guys. It's not. You don't have to dress up in your pajamas for pajama night, but you might as well, because you're probably in them all day anyway, right? So I look forward to seeing lots of you on future Zooms, and really look forward to seeing all of you in person with Mark and Nancy when we have our dedication. So thank you all. Have a lovely evening.
Everyone stay healthy.
Yeah, stay healthy.
Yes.
Bye.